Well, today we've got something really exciting for you, a walk-in closet project. Now, when we moved into this place, they just had builder-grade shelves there, and Nicole loaded it down with her copious amount of clothing, and it fell to the ground. So I went in, decided I was gonna be the hero. I got some screws, made sure I installed everything into the studs, got that thing back up there. It felt sturdy enough. She loads it down again, and it falls to the ground again. The good news is my screws were still in the studs. So the clips just broke, the arms bent, it was a mess. So now it's time to do right by this closet and by Nicole and make sure that we get a nice walk-in closet setup. Now, bit of a disclaimer here. This is a blind spot in my woodworking. I build furniture. I don't really do built-ins and I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. So you may know of a better way to get some of this stuff done. And if you wonder why I did something a certain way, because I don't know what I'm doing. Just doing my best to get through it and get my wife a nice closet set up. So first step here is to go into the space. We're gonna take some measurements and try to get that information into SketchUp. I basically grabbed the measurements from wall to wall, disregarding the baseboards since we'll be pulling those out. I then took those dimensions and plugged them into SketchUp with a basic wireframe. From here, I started considering my build strategy. I decided to build the cabinets on top of level bases made from 2x4s and OSB. This not only gives me a nice level and flat surface to build upon, it also allows me to overhang my cabinets, yielding a perfect toe kick. Closets are a very personal thing, and I worked directly with Nicole to make sure that we had the types of storage she likes and none of the stuff that she doesn't. We really want to maximize storage space while making the best use of the materials, so my cabinets are sized to make use of 4x8 sheets of plywood in the most efficient way possible. These large sections, for instance, are going to be 8 foot tall, 24 inches deep, and 4 foot wide. The small alcove on the side will have a lower bank of drawers and a 3-door cabinet up top. With a rough plan in place, it's time to head back to the shop. Now the bases are as simple as can be. Like I said, just OSB on top of a 2x4 frame.
I like the screw.
I assembled what I could in the shop, but some decisions will need to be made on site. The unit for the small alcove is really the only one that I could fully assemble ahead of time. Now we can prep the space. Of course, taking off the door is a real good idea considering how many times we're going in and out of the space with large pieces of plywood, and of course all the baseboard was removed so that we could push everything right up against the walls. We also had to take down the closet hardware and then patch the holes. And Abby is always there to make sure we're doing everything correctly. So the funny thing is, no matter how much you plan, sometimes you just make a bonehead move when it's time to do the actual job. Here you can see me attaching the frame to the wall and then securing the OSB to the top. Well, that's when I realized that I totally forgot to level the frame first.
Let's see what we got. Level for my house.
So I have to remove the screws and do the leveling and shimming. Once everything is level front to back and side to side, I'll secure the unit to the wall and then reattach the top. The smaller alcove piece then gets dropped like it's hot, and speaking of hot...
You know we make a video about woodworking. It's more than just your ass in this show.
Well, some people might like to see it. What's good, Marc? Oh, look at that. Look, would you look at that?
Well...
The longest section has one obstacle that we need to work around, and that's the air conditioning vent in the floor. To redirect the airflow out the toe kick, I'm using a nifty little product called the toe ductor. It's specifically built for this task. We secure one end to the floor with caulk and screws, and then the other end will be secured to the gap in the toe kick. That should effectively redirect the airflow out across the floor. And now we could just build our platform around the duct. I won't be putting OSB right over that ductwork though, since it sits a little bit proud, and the bottom of the cabinet will actually span that gap with no problems.
Floor's gonna squeak. So now we gotta be careful though, because these have to be coplanar across here, right?
What?
This surface.
Planter.
They gotta line up.
Is that so hard?
Now for the fun part, cutting the cabinet parts back at the shop. The project called for a whopping 12 sheets of cherry plywood. At about $150 a sheet, that's $1,800 for the plywood alone, which sounds really expensive until you price out how much it costs to have a closet like this made by a professional closet company. Back in Arizona, we had a closet made, it's about 10 years ago now, and the cost was $7,000. So if I don't really count my labor, which for my own stuff I don't typically, this is one project where we actually did save money by doing it ourselves. And as a bonus, I'm also going to end up with a higher quality product in the end. Most of the units will have 24 by 96 sides, so most of the sheets are basically just cut in half. By the way, I know track saws are pretty standard fare these days, but if you don't have one and you work a lot with plywood or other sheet goods, I highly recommend you think about getting one. Doesn't have to be Festool either. Lots of companies make them now and they're a lot less expensive than the Festool model. But being able to accurately and cleanly break down plywood into smaller pieces right on the ground is a real backsaver. At least it is for me. Now each of these pieces has one clean edge and one factory edge, so I'm just doing a little grazing cut at the table saw to clean up that factory edge and then make all the pieces the exact same width, which is as close to 24 inches as I can manage. Oh, and hey, see those gloves? Well, usually gloves are a no-no around power tools, but there are times when I make an exception. One is when my hands are extremely cold. That's not the case here. The other is when I need a good grip and I want to protect myself from splinters. So with the amount of plywood we're processing for this project and running it through the table saw over and over, I find it more important to make sure I maintain a good grip and I don't overtax my hands and my joints as I'm doing it. And I think keeping my hands far enough away from the blade with a blade guard installed and a feather board, I feel like the math is in my favor here. Now some of the pieces need to be cut for the various shelves, so we'll cross-cut them over at the MFT. The adjustable shelves will also come out of these pieces. Now for the joinery that will connect the sides to our tops and bottoms. I'm going to try to piss off the widest range of people possible all in one fell swoop by using dominoes and pocket screws. Let me explain why. I have to assemble these on site in a very cramped space. The dominoes will not only give the joint extra strength, but will more importantly help keep the pieces aligned. And because clamping with glue would be really challenging in that space, the pocket screws are going to bring the parts together and close the joints. Now the dominoes get pre-glued into all of the shelves. Throughout this whole process, I'll be able to use the same Storystick, which is just my domino and screw locations on a piece of scrap, every time I reference from the front. Sometimes my son Mateo will stop in the shop and try to earn a few bucks with Dad by doing a little bit of sanding, so he did a fantastic job that day. Using the Storystick, I can make my marks on the sides and plunge the domino holes. When all the joinery is cut, I pre-finish the panels using Osmo's hardwax oil. If you've seen my hardwax oil shootout, that's the one that had the most sheen after a single coat, and one coat is all I'm doing here. Back at the casa, I unload the parts for one of the larger cabinets. The way the schedule worked, I just brought these parts home with me at the end of the day, so I didn't have Jay there to do the final install. A second person would certainly have made things easier, but as you'll see, it's totally something that a single person can do. I assembled the cabinet on its side, using the pocket screws to pull it all together. In some cases, a clamp was helpful for bringing the pieces together nice and snug. To help keep the sides from bowing in or out too much, I added 2 strips to the larger shells. These will also give me something to screw through when attaching to the wall. With the unit together, I just narrowly missed the ceiling light. That thing's coming out anyway, so it's not a big deal, but I'd rather not clean up broken glass at the moment. And you know, that's something you really need to think about with projects like this. Your clearances. Will you be able to fit everything through the doors? What can you pre-assemble ahead of time? Will you be able to lift the parts like I did here without smashing into the ceiling? Pythagoras is your friend. You might be wondering, where's the back? Well, there is none. The structure will be screwed to the wall, to the base, and then to the adjoining cabinets, so there's really no need for one. You can put one there if you want to. And now, a word from our sponsor. And that's me. I'm the sponsor.
I'm Christopher Swartz, and I am a professional furniture maker and the publisher at Lost Art Press. And I want to teach you how to make a stick chair. A lot of woodworkers are put off by chair making because of the crazy angles and the curves and having to use green wood. But in my new video, I'm going to show you how to make a chair without any of those special chair making tools or processes. We'll learn to get all the compound angles right with just a drill and a construction laser. You'll learn how to make curved arms, not with a steam box, but by laminating regular home center red oak. And the sticks? These are just 5/8 inch dowels from the home center. And as a bonus, we'll even learn how to saddle the seat using only one specialty chair making tool, the Travisher. So if you've ever been intimidated by chair making, I urge you to check out this project at thewoodwhispererguild.com.
Some of the cabinets will have shelves, both fixed and adjustable, so those take a little bit more work. And of course, the adjustable shelves will require some shelf pin holes. Back at the house, we assemble and install the second cabinet.
This would be a hell of a lot easier with 2 people now.
This time, the ceiling fixture doesn't fare as well.
This might just slide on the bottom. Oh, easy. Oh. I'm going to try and completely clear it. Okay. There. Whoopsie.
It's alright. I don't like that thing anyway.
Insurance cover that?
And as I watch this myself, I'm noticing that Jay and I apparently dressed exactly the same that day, which is really weird. But they say things sync up when you spend a lot of time with other people, so maybe it's not a coincidence. But I do like his taste in shorts. And don't get any ideas, ladies. He's married.
That's what they want.
Come on in.
You might want to go into this second.
Oh,
Jason!
I'm over here.
Pick up my stupid phone.
Yeah, the cheat knocked off.
Bat and 1,000 here for this project. If there's one thing people will learn from this one is not to follow my advice on this. I warned them. It's gonna suck. You ain't gonna like it.
You might also notice that there's no finish on some of the parts. Anything that won't be seen doesn't get finish.
Watch out for the light, whatever you do.
Yeah.
And just like that, we have the first 3 boxes in place. And there should be a decent gap on both sides. You really don't want a tight fit with something like a built-in, because a tight fit with the inaccuracies in drywall and the structure behind it, a tight fit usually means it's not going to fit. Always leave yourself a little bit of spare room, and you can cover it with trim later. On the other side of the closet, it's much the same with one skinny section and one wider section. So one thing I've been avoiding this whole time is the electrical and lighting. We're getting rid of the light fixture and converting that circuit to multiple LED fixtures in the ceiling, just putting them on the same circuit. I've been avoiding these because it is HOT hot, like Missouri summer hot. And there's no better place to be on a hot summer Missouri day than the attic. Let's do this. So I'm not going to show you every detail, but I can just sum up. I drilled a small hole at each desired location and shoved a stick up that hole so that I could locate it in the attic. Once located, I cleared out the loose insulation and then drilled a hole from below.
Hello there.
The lights are just daisy chained into the existing circuit, so the installation was a breeze. And now we have a total of 3 lights. I also installed a new outlet, which will come into play on the next phase. So now it's time to secure everything. Because the sides are so long, it's unlikely that they're staying dead flat, so to help convince them that they want to be flat, I use a long piece of 8/4 stock that I jointed in the shop. With that clamped to the side, I can be confident that the side is flat and proceed with the shimming and securing to the wall. I could then use the strips at the back to secure the cabinet to the rear wall. Now I can clamp the adjacent cabinet to the first one, using the 8/4 piece to keep everything nice and flat, and then drive some screws to marry them together. Nicole decided that she wants an adjustable rod instead of a static rod for hanging things, so I'll need to drill a series of 5mm holes in the middle of the cabinet, something that's not too difficult to do at this late stage using a jig. Back at the shop, I can start milling up the face frame trim, which will all be from cherry. Standard face frames are about 1.5 inches wide, but given the scale of this closet, I really like the way it looks with something closer to 1 5/8, so I'm going wider. I'll also retain a few extra wide pieces for the ends where I'll do my scribing. These scribe pieces also get a bevel on the edge that goes against the wall, and that'll make finessing that shape a little easier and prevent the wall from pushing the trim out. I do a little sanding and profile the edges where I can, and then head back to the house for the install. I'll start with the outside stiles. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit apprehensive at this point because I really don't do this kind of stuff with built-ins very often, but I've got a plan and I think it's going to work. I double stick tape some 1/2-inch thick spacers on the inside face of the cabinet. I then line up my oversized stile, making it flush with those spacers and then clamping it in place. I use that same thickness spacer up top to make sure that the trim sits a 1/2 inch above the cabinet top. Now I set my scribe for exactly a 1/2 inch and scribe the shape of the wall onto the stile. I brought my small 10-inch bandsaw home so that I can make these cuts fairly easily. And I make any fine adjustments using a block plane. This is where the bevel helps because it would be a lot more work if I had to plane a 3/4 inch thick edge, but because of the bevel, the actual material is a lot narrower. Alright, and that's not too bad for a rookie. So I'll grab some Titebond Quick and Thick and apply that to the edge. I'll then attach the strip with brads through these little pieces of blue tape. The tape helps prevent staining when I add filler to hide the holes. Now I can proceed with adding the rest of the trim. I don't want to use brads unless I have to, so I'm using clamps to hold the trim in place while the glue dries. On a face frame like this that's installed piece by piece, I think it's really important to have glue and good pressure here so that the frame parts impart as much strength as possible to the cabinet units. The upper trim pieces are extra wide so that they'll allow for the attachment of crown molding later on. And speaking of crown, thankfully we don't have too much to install, and we only have one outside corner. The crown gets a nice sanding in the shop because there are still noticeable milling marks on the surface. To install the crown, I clamp in a support board that'll help me get the right position, but also acts like a second set of hands. From there, I can add a bead of glue and some brads. The crown on the other side requires a notch in the face frame so that it wraps cleanly around the side, but with only one corner, it's pretty easy to install. So now I'm going back to any areas that didn't receive a round over before, and then sanding everything nice and smooth. I'll also sand the brad nail holes and then remove the tape. And all of these last trim details are finished right in place. I'm sure some of you are wondering why I didn't take the cabinets all the way to the ceiling. Well, because it's not really worth it. The cabinets are already 8 feet tall on top of the platform, so extending them the extra height wouldn't really be worth the trouble in my opinion. And I'll be able to add some LED strips above the cabinets to make some nice accent lighting, which I think would look pretty sweet. And while this is just the first part of the project, it's done enough for Nicole to actually get her clothes out of the bathtub and finally get them hung up in a proper closet.
What you doing?
I'm filling my closet up.
Oh. 2,000 pounds of clothes. These wire racks just aren't sturdy enough. Quite the collection of fine kimonos.
But no time to celebrate, we still have some more work to do. I almost forgot that we need some material at the back of the toe kick to cover up the 2x4s, and remember that duct? Well, we need to cut a notch for that too. As well as trim for the adjustable shelves. There are quite a few of those adjustable shelves, so we'll need to do a lot of this. And that includes 2 large adjustable shelves that were kind of a late game addition since there was space above the hanging rods. And yes, I did scribe the toe kick since the floor definitely isn't flat and I really want that thing to look nice. Finally, I can add the base trim to the outside of the smaller cabinet set. With the addition of the adjustable shelves, the first part of the closet is complete. I've built a lot of things in my time as a woodworker, but I have to tell you, the projects that mean the most are the ones that make a real difference to the people in my life, especially when those people are family. Nicole really wanted this closet bad, so it gives me a lot of joy seeing her finally happy with her closet situation.
Excited?
But stay tuned, because the story isn't over. We still have a bank of drawers and an upper cabinet with doors to build and install, and we'll get that next time.